Welcome to Dark Archive History. Here, we explore the stories history tried to forget, disappearances without answers, missions that never returned, and mysteries buried beneath time, ice, and silence. Tonight's story asks a chilling question. How can 5 planes vanish together in perfect formation without a trace? As you listen, tell me what you believe happened. Was it human error, nature's fury, or something far stranger? Leave your theory in the comments. If you enjoyed dark historical mysteries, like, subscribe, and tell me what story you want me to uncover next. Now, let's enter the archive. On the afternoon of December 5th, 1945, the war was over, but the sky still belonged to the Navy. Just 3 months earlier, World War II had ended. America was victorious. Pilots were returning home, and military flights were no longer missions of survival, but exercises of routine. Or so it seemed. At Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, 5 aircraft waited on the runway. They were TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, powerful, battle-tested machines designed to hunt submarines and survive enemy fire. These planes had faced death before. Today, they were scheduled for something far more ordinary, a navigation training exercise. The mission had a name so harmless it felt almost forgettable. Navigation problem number 1. The men. At the center of this flight was Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor. Taylor was not inexperienced. He was a combat veteran. He had flown missions over the Pacific. He had survived enemy fire, bad weather, and the chaos of war. By December 1945, Taylor had logged more than 2,500 flight hours. To the young pilots assigned under him, he was authority in human form. 4 student aviators followed his lead, men in their early 20s, confident, eager, and trusting. They climbed into their cockpits believing this flight would be over before dinner. None of them knew it would become their final journey. The plan. The flight plan was simple, almost insultingly simple. Fly east from Florida over the Atlantic Ocean. Turn north after bombing practice near the Hens and Chicken Shoals. Then fly west back to base. A triangular route. Standard training. Clear skies. The weather briefing showed good visibility, moderate winds, nothing dangerous. This was the kind of flight pilots flew hundreds of times, and that is what makes what happened next so disturbing. Takeoff. At 2:10 p.m., engines roared to life. One by one, the 5 Avengers rolled down the runway and lifted into the sky. They formed a tight, disciplined V formation. From the ground, they looked perfect, dark silhouettes against a bright winter sun. Observers watched them disappear eastward, shrinking into dots over the ocean. No alarms were raised, no warnings were issued. No one suspected that within hours, these aircraft would be erased from history. Calm before confusion. For nearly an hour, everything went according to plan. The pilots reached the bombing area. They completed their exercises. They turned north, just as instructed. Then, something changed. At 3:45 p.m., the control tower received an unexpected radio transmission. It was Lieutenant Taylor. His voice was uncertain. "This is an emergency. We seem to be off course. We cannot see land." That alone was unusual, but not alarming. What followed was, everything looked strange, even the ocean. The compasses. Taylor reported that both his compasses were malfunctioning. To a pilot, this is not a small problem. The compass is not just an instrument, it is orientation itself. Without it, east and west blur together. Sky becomes a mirror. Ocean becomes a trap. Other pilots checked their own instruments. They were working. One of them spoke up, his transmission clear and confident. "If we fly west, we'll reach land." It was correct. Florida was west. But Taylor didn't believe it. A fatal assumption. Taylor believed he was over the Florida Keys.
He wasn't. But this single assumption sealed their fate. Believing he was south of Florida instead of east, Taylor feared flying west would take them deeper into the Gulf of Mexico. So he ordered them to turn northeast, away from safety, away from land, into open Atlantic water. The student pilots questioned him, respectfully but clearly. Their radios captured hesitation, confusion, doubt.
Taylor hesitated, then insisted. Rank overruled reason. The weather turns. As the planes flew farther from land, the sky changed. Clouds thickened. Visibility dropped. The sea below darkened into a vast, textureless void. The sun began to sink. Night approaches faster over the ocean than anywhere else. The pilots realized something was very wrong. Fuel gauges were falling. And still, no land. Control tower listens. Back at Fort Lauderdale, radio operators listened in growing alarm. Taylor's voice, once calm and commanding, now carried strain. "We're completely lost." The words hung in the air. Other pilots tried again. "Turn west." Taylor paused. Static filled the channel. "We'll fly west until fuel runs out." That sentence would become legendary.
Formation to the end. Despite confusion, panic, and dwindling fuel, one thing never broke. Formation. 5 planes stayed together. They did not scatter. They did not flee. They trusted their leader. As darkness fell, the last coherent message came through. All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. The transmission ended abruptly. No mayday, no crash sound, no final coordinates. Just silence. The ocean closes. Somewhere over the Atlantic, 5 aircraft ran out of fuel. Ditching a plane at night in rough seas is almost never survivable. But even then, wreckage should float. Oil should surface. Bodies should be found. The ocean gave nothing back.
By late afternoon, Flight 19 was no longer flying a mission. It was surviving a mistake. Somewhere above the Atlantic, 5 planes drifted farther from certainty with every passing minute. The sky looked wrong. Not stormy, not violent, just unfamiliar. Lieutenant Charles Taylor stared at the horizon, searching for something that should have been obvious. Coastline, islands, landmarks. There were none. Only water. The voices in the radio. Inside Taylor's headset, voices overlapped. Calm at first, then urgent. One student pilot spoke again. "If we head west, we'll get home." Another followed. "My compass reads west just fine." Taylor hesitated. He trusted instruments, but his own were failing. And worse, he trusted his memory.
Taylor was convinced he recognized the islands below. He believed he was south of Florida. He believed flying west would doom them. So he chose east. Authority versus reality. In military aviation, rank is survival. Questioning your leader too aggressively can fracture a formation. And formation, especially over open ocean, is everything. The younger pilots obeyed. Reluctantly. The planes turned again, engines roaring into a sky that no longer felt friendly. Minutes stretched into an hour. Fuel gauges continued to fall. And still, no land. The weather closes in. Clouds gathered thick and low. Not a storm, but a suffocating ceiling. The sunlight dimmed, turning gold to gray. The ocean beneath them became featureless. No waves, no depth, just endless movement.
Pilots rely on visual reference to maintain orientation. Without it, the mind plays tricks. Up becomes sideways, straight becomes spiral. Disorientation crept in silently. Control tower desperation. Back in Florida, radio operators leaned closer to their equipment. Static swallowed half the transmissions. Taylor's voice returned, strained now. "We're not sure where we are." The tower responded with firm instructions. "Turn west immediately." Taylor replied after a pause. "I don't think that's correct." It was the moment when rescue slipped further away. Time becomes the enemy. Fuel calculations were brutal. The Avengers could not remain airborne indefinitely. Each minute spent debating direction burned survival away.
One pilot broke formation slightly, not to flee, but to signal. His voice cracked. "We're running low." Taylor acknowledged it, but indecision lingered. The planes continued forward, into nothing. The first panic. Fear does not arrive screaming. It creeps. A tightening chest, a faster breath, a thought that refuses to leave. What if we never find land? Inside one cockpit, a pilot stared at his fuel gauge, calculating again and again, hoping math would change. It didn't. Another pilot scanned the horizon, convinced land would appear if he stared hard enough. It didn't. Taylor remained silent longer between transmissions. Leadership weighs heavier when you realize you may be wrong. A fractured formation. As dusk approached, formation loosened.
Not from disobedience, but fatigue. Pilots were exhausted from constant corrections, visual strain, mental stress. Still, they stayed close. No one wanted to be alone. The ocean below was growing darker, colder. The moment of realization. At approximately 6:20 p.m., Taylor finally said what everyone feared. "We're completely lost." There was no argument this time. No one disagreed. The silence that followed was worse than panic, because silence meant acceptance. The last strategy. Taylor made a final plan. It was simple. It was desperate. "We'll fly west until fuel runs out." No promise of rescue. No certainty of land. Just inevitability. The planes turned, slowly, as one. If they were wrong again, there would be no second chance.
The sky grows dark. Night descended faster than expected. The last of the sunlight vanished behind clouds. Stars failed to appear. The ocean absorbed all light. Inside cockpits, instrument panels glowed dim orange. Engines hummed, steady, faithful, unaware they were burning the last hope. The men. Each pilot faced the same thoughts. Families waiting at home. Meals unfinished. Plans never spoken. They had survived war. And now, training would end them. Still, they flew. Together.
Night did not fall suddenly. It crept. The last color drained from the sky, replaced by a deep, hollow blue. Clouds thickened overhead, swallowing stars before they could appear. Below the plains, the Atlantic had transformed. No waves, no reflections, no horizon, just blackness. For the men of Flight 19, the world had collapsed into a narrow space, a cockpit filled with dials, breath, and fear. Fuel, the final clock. Every pilot was watching the same instrument, the fuel gauge. Once it reached empty, the engines would not fail gently. They would cough, shudder, then die. There would be no restart. The Avengers were heavy aircraft. Ditching them into rough seas at night was nearly impossible to survive. The pilots knew this.
They had trained for it, in daylight, in calm water, with rescue nearby. This was none of that. The final command. Lieutenant Taylor broke the silence. His voice was quieter now. Measured. All planes, stay close. Formation tightened. 5 silhouettes drew nearer, their wing lights faint against the dark. No one spoke of panic. But it was there. Unspoken. Unavoidable. Taylor continued. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together. It was not an order born of strategy. It was an order born of humanity. No one would be left alone in the dark. Static and shadows. Radio transmissions became fragments. Words arrived broken, swallowed by static. Operators on the ground leaned closer, straining to hear anything usable.
Taylor's voice cut through once more. It looks like we're entering white water. What did he mean? Foam? Cloud reflections? Disorientation? No one could be sure. The first engine falters. Inside one aircraft, the engine stuttered. Not enough to fail, just enough to warn. The pilot's hands tightened. His fuel gauge needle trembled at empty. Another voice came over the radio, younger, frightened. I'm almost dry. Taylor responded immediately. Hold tight. Those were the last clear words he would speak. The final moments. At approximately 7 p.m., the last known transmission was received. Taylor's voice, strained, distant, said, "All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall." The sentence never finished. No mayday. No scream.
Ditching in the dark. Somewhere over the Atlantic, engines failed. One by one, or perhaps together, 5 aircraft lost power. In darkness, with no visual reference, pilots would have had seconds to react. Pull up too hard? Stall. Too shallow? Skip across waves and break apart. The ocean does not forgive hesitation. No one knows how many seconds passed between engine failure and impact. No one knows if any man survived the water. The sea closes. If wreckage floated, currents took it. If oil surfaced, waves erased it. The Atlantic absorbed everything. By morning, there was nothing to mark where Flight 19 had ended. No smoke, no debris field, no bodies. Just an empty sky.
Morning came to the Atlantic Ocean, as it always had. Calm, indifferent, unaware of the lives it had taken. At Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, radios that had screamed with static the night before now whispered nothing at all. Flight 19 was overdue. And that meant only one thing. The search begins. Within hours, the U.S. Navy launched one of the largest search operations in its history. More than 300 aircraft, over 20 ships, thousands of men. They searched every possible route, east, west, north, south. The ocean was scanned from horizon to horizon. Nothing. No wreckage, no oil slicks, no bodies. Not even a fragment of metal. It was as if the planes had dissolved into air.
Officially, the Navy ended the search on December 10, 1945. Unofficially, the mystery had only begun. The official report. The Navy's final conclusion was brief.
Cold, unsettling. Cause unknown. No blame was assigned, no definitive error identified, no physical evidence presented. Later revisions quietly suggested pilot disorientation. But that explanation failed to answer the most important question: where did the planes go? Theories emerge. As years passed, speculation filled the void where facts ended. Some believed Taylor's compasses truly failed, leading them endlessly away from land. Others blamed human error, a single wrong assumption multiplied by authority. But darker theories followed: magnetic anomalies, time distortion, uncharted storms,
underwater methane explosions, and eventually, the Bermuda Triangle. Flight 19 became the cornerstone of the legend. Why no trace? Aviation accidents usually leave evidence. Wreckage floats, fuel spreads, bodies surface. But Flight 19 left nothing. Oceanographers point to deep currents that could scatter debris within hours. Historians argue wartime aircraft sank quickly. But no explanation satisfies completely. Not after decades of searching. Not after sonar. Not after satellites. The men remembered. 14 pilots. 13 rescuers. Young men. Veterans. Sons. They are remembered not by graves, but by coordinates with question marks. By silence. By an ocean that refuses to explain itself. The legacy. Flight 19 did not create fear of the Bermuda Triangle.
It defined it. 5 planes flying in formation. Clear weather. Experienced leader. Gone. Not destroyed. Not found. Just removed. Final words. History is full of disasters, but some are louder than others. Flight 19 does not scream. It whispers. And the ocean still listens.